Hi, I'm John, and welcome back to Dice Paper Miniatures. In this episode, we're going to look at the new FAQ that just came out for Warhammer Underworlds. It's actually, the links are buried in the Sunday previews back on May 1st. So you'll want to make a note of that. I'm at the header of this article now, but we'll scroll down. At the very bottom of the article is a link to those new Errata FAQ links to the Warhammer Underworlds. In fact, one of them is a brand new errata that was literally put out basically the day of the new Warhammer Underworlds Nethermaze just came out, which is good, but also kind of weird. But here we are. All right, let's check it out. All right, so again, if we go back to the Sunday preview article from May 1st, we'll scroll all the way down. And here at the very bottom, we have the Warhammer Underworlds Nethermaze, and it's a link to all the FAQs. So it says the Warhammer Underworlds Nethermaze box set hit shelves yesterday, along with the new Exiled Dead warband. Before you start exploring the depths of the realm of shadow, be sure to download the latest FAQ and errata here. So we'll click on this link, and it basically it drops us to the Warhammer Underworlds, but it's, if you're not familiar with this, under the Warhammer Community website, there's a section on, we'll just go back to it just so you can find it. You just go to FAQs and downloads, and then you scroll down, and there's a slider banner here, and you can pick what product. It defaults to Warhammer 40K, of course, but the link that we had defaulted us to the Harrowdeep one. So it still says Harrowdeep, even though now we're into Nethermaze. Just be aware of that. All right, so Warhammer Underworlds, and we have basically errata for the Arena Mortis format rules, the Championship format rules, the Relic format, and the Warhammer Underworlds Rivals format rules. And then if we scroll a little further down, there's that Nethermaze update, which is kind of, it is what it is, kind of funny, kind of awkward that they already have a an errata / update for Nethermaze, and it just came out this weekend. So, oh well. I think we'll look at that first, and then we'll go back and take a look at these different formats for these different play formats that you play. Oh, using words as descriptives for the words themselves. The best way. It's the only way to go. All right. So it's a 5-page document, and it's the official RATA and beta rule for May 2022. So if you're not familiar with these type of documents, basically what you see in magenta is the updated rule or errata. Now, what's interesting is it's been a while since I've played on Underworlds, to be honest. And so even though some of the stuff that's not in magenta is kind of new to me. But basically, if we scroll down a little bit, it goes into saying fighter traits and keywords. In Warhammer Underworlds Harrowdeep, 2 fighter traits were added, Beast and Flying. In addition, several keywords have been added to the last few seasons that are not reflected on older fighter cards. The following fighters from older warbands gain the additional traits and or keywords listed here. Where relevant, the trait or keyword replaces a similar ability on their fighter card. From now on, these abilities all work in the same way. So it is kind of a way of cleaning up the mechanics or rules. It's kind of nice that they're doing that because it means they still care about the game, but it's also kind of a pain because not only we'll see here soon, not only does it mean they're adding new keywords to the cards, there's other cards that now affect cards that have those keywords. So they have to add those cards on the list as well. And we'll see that here in a minute. I won't go through all of these, but just make a note that they go all the way back to Shadespire as far as adding some of these keywords. So for example, we have Scything, Grievous, but you'll also notice, again, if you haven't looked at this document before, for example, like the Sepulchral Guard has the Harvester, they got Brawler, Petitioner got Minion. Make a note of that. I'm not sure how I want to update my cards, but I just want to point out that they've added these keywords to not only the warbands, but we'll see here further, they've also updated a lot of cards, a lot of the power card traits. And it goes into Yeah, I'll just read this out here. Fighter traits and the keywords Ensnare, Grievous, and Scything are not reflected on some older power cards. The following power cards gain the traits and or keywords listed here. The trait or keyword replaces the similar ability on the card, but does not affect the other rules on the card. For example, the Shade Glass Dagger is discarded when the attack action is successful, even if they change a name or a keyword. So we have things like Ensnare. All these cards have the keyword Ensnare. So there's Chill Touch from the Night Vault. There's Inescapable Grasp, also from Night Vault. There's the Seeking Blade from Night Vault, Seeking Stones from Night Vault, and then the Spite Thorn Arrow, which is from Power Unbound. We also have things like Flying, again, Grievous. And these are all across the board. We have Dire Chasm cards, Beastgrave cards, more Night Vault. And then for Scything, all the way back to Shadespire and Night Vault again. Yeah, a lot of magenta. A lot of card errata. So the Exiled Dead also. So they made a kind of a point in that Sunday preview list how the Nethermaze has some things, but also Exiled Dead. So the Exiled Dead fighters, Prentice Markov, changed the Puppeteer action on both sides of the fighter card to read action. This fighter and a friendly Regulus can each make one action other than this action. Then place up to one friendly out of action Regulus in an empty hex within 2 hexes and give the Regulus 1 raise counter. Reactions cannot be used during this action. I've read this card before. I'm not really sure what the rewording does mechanically just yet for the card. I haven't played this warband yet. I just picked it up this weekend. But there you go. There is an errata to that card already. So let's keep going and see if any other erratas kind of creeped in. Yeah, it looks like for the Spike Claw Swarm upgrades, the Black Hunger, all the way back from Shadespire. This fighter's range 1 attack actions have a +1 damage and Scything, so they introduced that keyword. While this fighter makes a range 1 attack action, other friendly fighters are considered to be enemy fighters, and fighters in your warband cannot be supported. All right. Then we have some universal upgrades. The Shadow Keeper, this is from Harrowdeep. They also have the number of the cards. Add the following to this card: Illusion. Do not spend any glory points when you play this card at the end of the action phase or when this fighter is chosen by a gambit or is dealt damage. Break this card. Okay. And then we have a beta rule. So a beta rule is one that we want to test with the community to be sure that we're making the best possible ruling before we set anything in stone. You don't have to use this rule in your game. I kind of wish they had a different color key for beta rules, to be honest. But if you do, we're looking for your feedback on how this change affects you. Let us know your thoughts, alternative ideas, and feedback from your games at our official feedback inbox, whunderworlds@gwplc.com. I mean, that's cool that they're trying to get community feedback. It really makes me wonder what the deal is with their playtest groups. If they're struggling to get quality feedback, I wonder about that. So we have Morgoth's Crush's fighters. On each fighter card, change the first ability to read as follows. After this fighter's activation in which they made 1 or more charge actions, place 1 Wa counter on this card. Man, I haven't played this warband very often. I have to go back and see how that really is different. If you're familiar with this warband, I'd love to have your comments below. How do you feel about that? What does that change for you for this particular warband? Have you even looked at this warband in a while? I'd be curious to see what you think. Well, like I said, 5 pages, that's it. Just a lot of little keywords and cleaning up on old cards. And if you haven't looked at this document in the past, it's definitely worth checking out because they've added a lot of keywords since Shadespire and Errata as well. This Inspire steps, I'm going to have to look more closely at to see if I've been playing some things incorrectly. For this being like the main errata, there wasn't necessarily specifically anything Nethermaze from what I could tell, but okay. Let's take a look at the arena format rules, see what erratas they have. It's just one document. It looks like they basically just updated the Forsaken cards list. So if you're not familiar with the arena Mortis, They define it as an exciting and unique format for Warhammer Underworlds. Choose your fighter, construct your twin power decks, and get ready for epic multiplayer games as you battle your rivals to claim glory in the Arena Mortis. So the Arena Mortis game uses the Warhammer Underworlds Diachasm Arena Mortis rules in addition to the core Warhammer Underworlds rules. So fighters, all previously released Warhammer Underworlds fighters and their warband faction cards are allowed. Deck construction, all previously released universal cards are allowed. However, where cards have been reprinted in multiple seasons, they are assumed to have the wording of the most recent version printed. There are no restricted cards in Arena Mortis format, and there are no Forsaken cards allowed. So, it's cool there's no restricted cards, but none of the Forsaken cards are allowed. So, as far as the boards you can play on, all previously released game boards are allowed, but the Forsaken cards, and this has been updated to May 2022. Cool. So, outright Forsaken means you cannot use any of these cards in your Arena Mortis decks. You have Infinite Riches from Night Vault, Prescient or Prescient Blow from Beastgrave, Quick Thinker from Shadespire, and Time Trap from Shadespire. So those are the only cards you can't have in your decks for Arena Mortis. I haven't played this format. I want to. I find it really interesting. I just, there's only so much, there's only so much time. But it seems like a cool format. All right, so let's check out those other erratas. So let's see if there's anything. Yeah, everything in magenta is the most updated stuff. So again, for those unfamiliar with the championship format rules, in Championship, players construct their power and objective decks using cards from the current and previous seasons of Warhammer Underworlds. To create the most balanced competitive experience, Championship uses Forsaken and restricted card lists. The card pool and the available boards in Championship are constantly evolving as new products are released, making it both fun and challenging way to play Warhammer Underworlds. So warbands, all previously released Warhammer Underworld warbands and their faction cards are allowed. Deck construction, only universal cards from the following set icons are allowed: Nethermaze, Harrowdeep, Diachasm Arena Mortis, and Warhammer Underworlds Essentials card pack. All other cards are not used. Those are the only ones you can build for your deck construction. There is one caveat, however, universal cards from previous sets not listed above, that have been reprinted in the above sets are considered legal, but are assumed to have the wording of the most recent version printed. Okay. A maximum of 3 restricted cards can be included across a player's objective and power decks, and then no Forsaken cards are allowed. So there's a variant format to Championship called the Alliance. So Alliance is a variant of the Championship format where teams of players compete together, aiming to win together as a team. Okay. Alliance format games use all the rules in this document with the following addition. Across a team's deck, each power and objective card may only be chosen once. There cannot be duplicates. All right. And then boards and placement. Only the following boards may be used in Championship format. It's quite a few. You can check out the list on your own. And then we have the best of 3 games rules. That's pretty self-explanatory though. And then the errata and designer commentaries. That's in a separate document. If you're curious, why the designers feel the way they feel and think the way they think, that document is for you. And the link for that is also back at designer commentary. It's below the errata link. So just FYI. So here we have the list of Forsaken and restricted cards as of May 2022. So for the Forsaken cards, which cannot be included in any Championship format, you have objective cards, and under objective cards, you have Scant Resources. That's from Diachasm. That's a new one added to the list. And that's it for new ones added to Forsaken. For restricted, there's a number of cards. So the following cards are restricted. You cannot include more than 3 restricted cards across your objectives and power decks in a Championship event. For example, you can include 1 objective from the restricted list in your objective deck, 1 gambit from the restricted list in your power deck, and 1 upgrade from the restricted list in your power deck. Once you have done that, you cannot add another restricted card to either deck. You have 3 restricted cards in total, which is the maximum. You must clearly identify restricted cards on the deck list that you submit at registration in an official Warhammer Underworlds tournament. The one caveat with alliances: at an alliance event, each player can include up to 3 restricted cards across their objective and power decks. So objective cards, nothing's changed. For power cards, we have Berserker Rage from Dire Chasm, Arena Mortis. We have Delicious Morsel from Dire Chasm. We have the Healing Potion, which is from the Essential Cards pack. We have Inured by Hunger from Dire Chasm. And we have the Silent Helm from Dire Chasm and Spirit Comb from Dire Chasm. Dire Chasm was clearly, I feel like both Beastgrave and Dire Chasm were kind of a little bit, their power level, power creep, whatever you want to call it, it had gotten up there a little bit. It looks like they're trying to dial it back some. So nothing from the Starblood Stalkers. The Crimson Court had Spirited Attempt. That's a bummer. All right, so Spirited Attempt, that's been now restricted. Canaan's Reapers, Hatred of the Living has been restricted. And Eluthian's Soul Raid, or Elethane's Soul Raid, Speed of the Flood Tide has been restricted. And like I mentioned before, you're going to see other cards listed on here, but the ones in magenta are the new adds. And that's it. It's a 3-page document, but no changes on the 3rd page. Just restricted cards, mostly power cards, a few warband specific, and 1 objective card has been forsaken. And then they've updated for championship format rules which seasons you can pull from as far as deck building goes. All right, so that's it for the championship. Let's take a look at the Relic format. See if any changes have happened here. Nothing highlighted in magenta, but for those unfamiliar with the Relic format allows players to combine cards from any season of Warhammer Underworlds in their power and objective decks. Certain cards are banned for gameplay reasons, but there are no restricted cards in Relic. This gives players access to all sorts of combinations when deciding which warband to use and the cards that will go into their decks, and allows them to use even the oldest cards in their collections. It's hard for me not to compare some of these formats to Magic the Gathering, of course, but in that list, while there's no magenta on this document, when you look at the Forsaken cards section on this document, it mentions to look at the most recent May 2022 update of Errata, Forsaken, and restricted cards. So while it's not on this list, it's on that list. All right, well, that was a pretty short one for Relic format. So let's go ahead and take a look at one of the last ones here. Yeah, the Rivals format. This is a relatively new format. Rivals is a format that exclusively features Rivals decks. A Warband's Rivals deck is a deck made from cards that only feature that Warband symbol, which means if you have at least one Warband, you have everything you need to join in with this competitive format. It's great for players just getting started with organized play, and it's a good way to put the latest Warband in your collection through their paces. So for Warbands, the rules are pretty straightforward. All Warhammer Underworlds warbands that have at least 12 faction objective cards and 20 faction power cards, of which no more than half can be gambits, can be used in the rival format. Where a warband does not have enough faction cards for a complete objective and/or power deck, as is the case with some older warbands, they can only be used in the Rivals format in combination with a universal Rivals deck. Pretty straightforward. They list deck construction, the boards you can use. They have the best of 3 games format, and the deck lists. So these reference cards list the cards included in 3 Rivals decks that have been produced so far. So we have the Maze Breachers Rivals deck, the Illusory Might Rivals deck, and the Silent Menace Rivals deck. So these are the cards lists that you could build your Rivals decks from. Again, pretty straightforward. But yeah, that's it for the Rivals format rules. And I believe that is everything. Now, again, this is a link that you can find on the Warhammer Community website, but it was a link kind of buried at the bottom of this Sunday preview that we had on May 1st. So with that said, what are your thoughts with these updates? On one hand, I'm glad that they came out right with the release of Nethermaze. I still feel that these are still kind of tough to find, but I guess if you play these games long enough, you eventually know where to go to get this information. So there's that. I still wonder just how solid the playtesting is, because it feels like there's a lot of erratas and FAQs, even to the point of changing some of the mechanics of the game. And then you add in the format of the season change, where we used to have one core set in 8 Warband expansion boxes. Now we get one core set, 2 expansion boxes, and then another core set, and then 2 expansion boxes. And then when that new core set comes out, the warbands from that previous core set get released into basically a dual box. It's a lot of little changes. It definitely keeps you on your toes. And this is kind of across all of the Games Workshop games. The more I continue doing content like this, I do find myself at times challenged, which games do I really want to focus on as a player? Because especially if you want to be a competitive player, you have to really be on point to make sure you keep up with all of these rule changes. And it's kind of tedious. And then when you factor in kind of the feel bads of the price increases, it can be tough. At least that's my perspective on it. I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. But that's it for this one. As always, if you've enjoyed this content but you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not? You don't have to answer, but you could consider subscribing, clicking that notification bell, and sharing this content with your friends. It's greatly appreciated, and it really helps with the growth of the channel. All right, well, as always, I hope you're all doing well. Be safe, take care, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.